Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to tell you today a little bit about human nature, but also some ways this affects our society. So, as you probably know, I'm not the first one to consider this subject. I mean, there was a lot of philosophers, economists, sociologists that wondered whether people are good or bad, but somehow they never considered a third option. But now, for the sake of us being on the same page, I'm just going to give you a short 2-minute summary of 200 years of economics. So, if we assume that people are good, namely they think about each other and the whole society when making life decisions, well, then no one wants to have more than others. And because of that, people want to be equal to one another. So our basic value is equality. So the system that seems to be the most effective is communism. But on the other hand, in communism, because of the fact that the people do not have a desire to possess more than others, they do not need any opportunities. So this is why communism ends up over here, and this is also why the selflessness of people leads to a situation where a lot of people are okay, a lot of people live a decent life, but nobody is really happy. So now what if we assume that people are bad, meaning that they're selfish and they think about themselves, their own benefit when making life decisions? Well, then of course the system that corresponds to this view towards human nature is capitalism. And in capitalism, there is a lot of opportunities for people that are intelligent, that are talented. But on the other hand, this also affects in a lot of people being very poor, a lot of people being very unhappy. So this is why capitalism ends up over here on this graph. Now a natural question would be, where would we place our society? Our society meaning Poland, but also other countries from the European Union, also the United States, and so on. So, on one hand, we do have the free market, we have private companies, so this is why there are opportunities for people that are intelligent, talented. But on the other hand, we have some public schools, public hospitals, so this is why our society would be placed somewhere around here. Now, the big thing is, can we do better? Can we move to the right top corner of this graph? Can we maximize the opportunities, but on the other hand, guarantee a certain decency of life for everybody? So what should our society look like then? Well, it's a bit easier to think of this way. So imagine you're an embryo and you're thinking of a system of social justice you'd like there to be when you're born. So the first thing is that you don't really know anything about yourself from the future. You don't know if you're going to be intelligent or not, talented or not, beautiful or ugly, perhaps handicapped. So despite of all that, you'd like to have a chance to be happy. So if you're born intelligent and talented, you'd like to have opportunities for yourself. And if you're born unintelligent, untalented, you'd still like to be able to satisfy some basic human needs, to have some basic pleasures. So this is why everyone should have access to things like hospitals, schools, offices, some cultural events. So now our idea is to give a lot of options to people. So a lot of different schools people can choose from, a lot of different doctors. So now everyone can find something for himself. But this only works under the assumption that people are rational and that they're able to choose what is the best for them. But what comes out to be true is that once we throw all these options in, it doesn't necessarily have to work. And this is simply because people are actually stupid and irrational when making some decisions. I mean, not you guys, other people. So now, as we can see, our society isn't actually that far away from this concept of social justice. So one might even say that we are striving for our society to look something like this. So this is why it is so important for us to understand this irrationality of people and to be able to fight it. So for the sake of understanding it, imagine the following situation. You walk into a supermarket and there is this stand with jellies. There's 6 jellies you can choose from. You can taste every jelly, so you try every jelly, you see which ones you like, and then you can buy one or not buy anything. Now imagine it wasn't 6 jellies, but 24 jellies. So you walk into a supermarket, situation is the same, there's a stand with 24 jellies, Now, you can taste every jelly, see which ones you like, you can buy something or not buy anything. So now, which time do you think it will be more likely for you to find a jelly that you like, for you to buy a jelly? The 6 jellies, okay. So an obvious intuition would be that it would be a case with 24 jellies just because there's more kinds of jellies. So if there's more kinds of jelly, it is more likely for there to be a jelly that will really suit your taste. But in this experiment, what came out to be true is that 3% of the people that walked up to the first stand bought a jelly, but it was only 30% of the people that walked up to the first stand bought a jelly, but it was only 3% of the people that walked up to the second stand that actually decided to buy something. So your intuition was actually correct. Now, what we see here is that people are overwhelmed by the decisions they have. The more choices they have, the less frequent it is for them to choose anything. So now, what is a jelly? Well, it's simply some fruit and sugar. So what can be less complicated than that? I mean, sugar is, but you don't really go into a shop and then start browsing between different kinds of sugars. So what if it was more complicated stuff we were choosing? What if there were more factors involved? What if we were to choose as scholarships? So some of you probably faced this problem. I mean, there's a lot of scholarships to choose from. You're thinking, which one would be the best for me? Would it be Fundacja Batorego, Fundacja na Rzecz Nauki Polskiej, maybe Fulbright? So what happens is a lot of people end up not choosing anything. So now, how can we help you choose these scholarships? Well, an idea is that at schools or at universities, there could be tutors that would simply seek for talented students and then suitable scholarships for their particular needs and help them apply to them. And now we could reward these tutors for finding these students so they would have a good motivation to actually make a research about different scholarships and to seek for these students. So of course we'd have a little less money for the students themselves, but we would have more students applying, and also the students that will apply to scholarships would really apply to scholarships that suit their particular needs. So now what we conclude from all this is that people do not always, we cannot assume that people will always pick what is the best for them. And because of that, it is not enough to just give people a lot of choices, but they also need help making them. So in the case of these scholarships, well, tutors were good solutions. I mean, they were the ones that help people. But it's not like we can have tutors for every part of our lives. So it's not like we can have tutors for everything. So how could we help people in other situations? Well, to do this, we'll have to understand this rationality of people a bit more. So let's go back to our jelly example and see it from a bit different a perspective. So there was really less people that actually decided to buy a jelly in the case of 24 jellies. They were overwhelmed by the number of choices they had. But now, there was still some 3% that actually decided to buy a jelly. So why was that? Well, the reason for that turned out to be pretty simple. It was simply because they had it on their shopping list when they walked into the supermarket that day. So it was default for them to buy it. So we see here straight away this importance of defaults in our lives. But this again is simply jellies, so fruit and sugar. But this can actually save lives. What do I mean by that? Well, these are organ donation charts showing the percentage of people that agreed to join donor programs amongst different countries. There's a few countries that seem to be giving a little, a few countries that seem to be giving a lot. So now, what is the reason for this? Well, an obvious answer would be that it's simply a cultural thing. There are societies that care about people, that care about each other. There are societies that simply don't. But as we can see here, the countries that are considered to be culturally similar are actually on the opposite ends. So Denmark seems to be giving a little, but Sweden seems to be giving a lot. Germany seems to be giving a little, but Austria seems to be giving a lot. And finally, the Netherlands seems to be giving a little, but Belgium seems to be giving a lot. So what is the real reason for this? Well, the reason turned out to be the DMV forms. So this is what the DMV form looked like in the countries that had a really low percentage. Check this box if you do want to join the donor program. Well, what people do is they simply don't check and they don't join. So this is what the DMV form looked like in the countries that have a really high percentage. Check this box if you do not want to join the donor programs. Well, the donor program, well, what happens now is people don't check, but now they join. So why don't people check these boxes? Well, it is simply because they're afraid of this choice. So we see here that people simply do not think at all when making some decisions, but simply take what is given to them. But the big thing is, how can we use this stupidity of people for their benefit? Well, what we can do is simply make people good. And by that I mean make all the choices they have as good on default. So in the case of the organ donations, the DMV form should look like this. Check this box if you do not want to join the donor program. So I'm going to give you another example of this. So this may look familiar to some of you. This is the form for giving 1% of your tax to charity. So you first have to choose a charity from a really wide variety, which, as we have seen, turns out to be complicated. And then you have to find out the official name of the charity, then a number given to them by court, and finally calculate 1% out of your tax. So overall, this is really complicated. And what people do is they don't check and they don't join. So how can we help people join these programs? Well, what we can do is simply set a default charity a person would donate the money to. For example, the same one as companies or simply a random one. And then enable him to change this charity to one he prefers, but also give him an option to resign from this program after all. So the basic idea is that people should have an option to make their life miserable, but they shouldn't be miserable on default. So what we can learn from all this is that people are irrational and they tend to make stupid decisions, but it is sometimes in a predictable way. So if we can find and fix all these situations that people are irrational and they tend to make stupid choices in, we can really make a difference. Thank you.